people at City Hall, they have a problem, and there's no doubt that they've got budgetary problems that they have to deal with. Boy, I think they're making a mistake with the extent of what they are proposing for the museum.
The longtime curator at the Lafayette Science Museum is worried what proposed budget cuts could mean for the museum. Now, if those budget cuts are approved, the Science Museum will go from 11 employees down to one. That one employee, the museum's administrator.
In May, Lafayette Mayor President Josh Guillory announced layoffs at the museum, which went into effect last month. He said should the financial situation change, the positions would be restored. 3's on the street tonight. Chris Welty live in downtown Lafayette at the Science Museum. And Chris, with additional cuts, is the museum closing?
Jim Marcel, that question is yet to be answered. Lafayette Mayor President Josh Guillory says all options are on the table, including public-private partnerships. But for one employee who's worked here at the Science Museum for decades, he says that the museum offers so much more value, and he hopes that the councils will see that not only for Lafayette, but value for the entire state. It's been 2 months since Dave Hostetter retired from the Lafayette Science Museum amid the first round of budget cuts.
Around the left side of the dome, that's the Apollo 11 landing site.
For 40 years, he worked in the planetarium. Hostetter, not wanting to get political, says it's critical to see the value the museum brings.
It's important, I think, not only to look at the cost of the museum, but also the value of the museum. And people come to the museum and they remember what they saw. They get experiences and they see things that they can't get or see anywhere else.
According to the proposed budget, the Science Museum is looking at a nearly 80% budget cut. Only the director would be left, and under the proposed budget, the utilities would not be funded. We asked the mayor president if he's closing the museum.
So I don't know if it's closing for good. I'm hoping that it's not. The bottom line, Chris, we got to find ways to be able to fund these things for locally, it's going to be a non-traditional manner.
Guillory maintains he wants to look at public-private partnerships to keep the museum open. He says there's simply not enough money in the general fund to responsibly keep funding the museum and other services in Lafayette Parish.
From little kids all the way to adults, we can all benefit from a community standpoint. My position is this, though: we only have so much money coming in, and we only have so much millages coming in. This is not funded by a millage. So I believe very confidently, once we really start partnering with the community, we'll find ways to fund it.
For Hostetter, he believes there should be government support for cultural quality of life, as well as drainage, roads, and police and fire protection.
The cultural hub of Louisiana, it needs to maintain those cultural activities that people value. And it doesn't matter whether it's the Science Museum or the Performing Arts Center or any other kind of museum.
Now, this isn't the only part of the budget that's facing drastic budget cuts. Parks and Recreation is facing steep cuts, as we know. 4 recreation centers on the north side is slated to close, as well as 37 employees laid off. The mayor president saying that these cuts are needed, saying that he's presenting a fiscally sound budget. Meanwhile, Hostetter, who you met in my story, says it's important for the community to continue speaking up for the facilities and services they want to keep amid this budget review. 3's on the street live in Lafayette. Chris Welty, KATC TV3.
Well, speaking of Parks and Rec, the Lafayette Parish Council struck down an effort to keep those 4 rec centers open on the north side. City Councilman Pat Lewis and Councilman A.B. Rubin proposed a joint meeting of the 2 councils today to introduce an ordinance to keep the centers open and avoid dozens of layoffs in Parks and Rec. But the motion to introduce the ordinance never received a second from the Parish Council, effectively killing it. Right now, the St. Landry